Long before humans set foot on Earth, before days or nights even existed, there was only emptiness. Not the quiet kind of emptiness, but a shapeless, timeless, directionless void, chaos. From this vastness emerged the first primordial entities, and among them were Gaia, Mother Earth, and Uranus, the starry sky. Gaia was solid, fertile, capable of creating life on her own. Uranus, vast and all-encompassing, cloaked Gaia with his celestial body each night. Together they formed the cosmic couple that ignited the creation of everything to come. From their union were born the first divine beings, the 12 Titans, the terrifying one-eyed Cyclopes, and the Hecatonchires, giants with 100 arms and 50 heads. But upon seeing the monstrous forms of some of his children, Uranus felt fear. Without compassion, he imprisoned them deep in Tartarus, a shadowy abyss in the Earth's depths, where light could never reach. Gaia was devastated. The pain of seeing her children buried in the womb of the Earth itself was unbearable. Enraged by Uranus's cruelty, she began to devise a plan for revenge. She gathered her Titan children and urged them to rise against their father. But none dared, except one. Cronus, the youngest and most ambitious of the Titans, stood up. Armed with a stone sickle forged by Gaia herself, he ambushed Uranus in a brutal attack. Cronus castrated his own father, throwing the severed genitals into the sea. From the blood that fell upon the earth came the Erinyes, goddesses of vengeance, and from the sea foam arose the stunning Aphrodite, goddess of love. With Uranus overthrown, Cronus took control, ushering in a new age. Cronus! The Titan who feared time with Uranus gone, Cronus became the supreme ruler of the world. Alongside his sister wife Rhea, he ruled over gods and mortals during an era known as the Golden Age. A legendary time when there was no hunger, no war, and no laws. According to ancient belief, humanity lived in perfect harmony, with no need for punishments or obligations. But even with all his power, Cronus was haunted by fear. Gaia and Uranus had prophesied that one of Cronus's children would one day overthrow him, just as he had done to his own father. That fear grew into obsession. To stop the prophecy from coming true, Cronus made a cruel choice. He began to devour all his children. As soon as each was born, he swallowed them whole, without mercy. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon all were trapped inside their father's belly, swallowed into a suffocating dark limbo. But Rhea, unwilling to let another child be lost, devised a clever plan. When she became pregnant with her sixth child, Zeus, she fled to the island of Crete. There, in secret, she gave birth to the baby. Instead of handing him over, she wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and gave it to Cronus, who swallowed it without suspicion. Zeus grew up in hiding, nursed by the goat Amalthea, protected by nymphs, and trained in secret. When he reached adulthood, he returned to confront his father. With help from the goddess Metis, he prepared a powerful potion that caused Cronus to vomit up all the children he had swallowed, still alive. The prophecy had begun to unfold. What followed was a cosmic war that would shake the very foundations of the universe. The Titanomachy, a clash between the old gods and the new. Zeus, king of the gods and lord of the sky. With the defeat of the Titans, Zeus rose as the supreme ruler of the cosmos. He divided the universe with his brothers. Poseidon took the seas, Hades ruled the underworld, and Zeus claimed the sky, and with it, the throne over all other gods. From his seat on Mount Olympus, Zeus governed the fates of gods, mortals, and nature itself. He was the god of thunder, lightning, justice, and divine order. His symbol, the thunderbolt, forged by the Cyclopes, a weapon so powerful it could destroy cities or punish betrayal with a single strike. But his reign wasn't ruled solely by law and order. Zeus was also infamous for his love affairs, and that often brought chaos to Olympus. Married to his sister Hera, goddess of marriage and family, Zeus was far from faithful. His countless affairs with goddesses, nymphs, and mortals produced a vast lineage of children, many of them demigods or heroes. Among his most famous children, Apollo and Artemis, with the Titaness Leto; Hermes, with Maia, daughter of Atlas; Dionysus, with the mortal Semele; Heracles, Hercules, with Alcmene, a mortal woman; and even Athena, who was born directly from his head after he swallowed Metis, his first wife. This seductive and impulsive nature caused endless conflict with Hera, who relentlessly pursued Zeus's lovers and illegitimate children with divine fury. Still, Zeus commanded respect and fear. His authority was absolute, and even the other gods hesitated to challenge him openly. He was also the protector of Xenia, the sacred code of hospitality. Violating this bond, harming a guest or betraying a host, was considered one of the greatest offenses in Zeus's eyes. As the supreme judge of Olympus, Zeus rewarded the righteous and punished the arrogant, especially mortals who dared to challenge or compare themselves to the gods. He also intervened frequently in human affairs. Zeus decided the outcomes of wars, sent omens through thunder or eagles, and influenced kings and heroes through dreams or oracles. In every sense, he was the divine bridge between heaven and earth. Hera, the jealous queen of Olympus. Hera, both sister and wife to Zeus, is the goddess of marriage, women, and family. Her golden throne atop Mount Olympus was more than symbolic. Hera was queen of the gods, and she fiercely protected what she considered hers, including Zeus himself. But her mythological legacy is marked more by jealousy and revenge than by authority or kindness. Hera was famous for her furious wrath, unleashed every time Zeus took another lover. And rather than punishing her husband, she turned her fury on his mistresses and children. One of her most infamous victims was Alcmene, the mother of Heracles. Hera tormented Alcmene throughout her pregnancy, and once Heracles was born, she sent 2 serpents to kill him in his crib. But the infant strangled them with his bare hands. Later in life, Hera drove Heracles mad, causing him to murder his own wife and children. To atone for the crime, he was forced to complete the legendary 12 labors, all tied, directly or indirectly, to Hera's fury. Another target was Io, a priestess of Hera's own temple who caught Zeus's attention. To hide the affair, Zeus turned Io into a white cow. Hera, suspicious, demanded the cow as a gift, and then had it guarded by Argus, a giant with 100 eyes. Zeus sent Hermes to kill Argus, and in mourning, Hera placed Argus's eyes on the tail of the peacock, her sacred animal to this day. When Leto, another of Zeus's lovers, became pregnant with Apollo and Artemis, Hera ruthlessly pursued her across the world, forbidding any land from giving her shelter. Only the floating island of Delos, aided by Poseidon, offered refuge for Leto to give birth. Despite her vengeance, Hera also had a noble side. She was the divine protector of married women, childbirth, and feminine strength. Her festivals, like the Heraia, were held throughout ancient Greece in her honor. But none dared provoke her. Even other gods feared Hera's temper. In one myth, she conspired with Poseidon and Athena to overthrow Zeus. When he broke free, Zeus punished her by suspending her from the sky in chains, with anvils tied to her feet, a harsh warning to anyone who might challenge his rule. Hera wasn't just Zeus's wife, she was his balance and counterweight. Where he ruled through might and impulse, she ruled through judgment, control, and unwavering pride. A goddess not easily pleased, but never ignored. Poseidon, lord of the seas and storms. Poseidon, brother to Zeus and Hades, is the god of the sea, of earthquakes, and of horses. After the defeat of the Titans, the universe was divided among the 3 brothers, and Poseidon received dominion over all oceans, rivers, lakes, and marine life. He ruled from a grand underwater palace, made of coral and precious gems, where he commanded the seas with his mighty trident, forged by the Cyclopes. Poseidon's personality mirrored the sea itself, unpredictable, powerful, and moody. Sailors and fishermen revered him, offering prayers and sacrifices for calm waters and safe journeys. But if angered, Poseidon could summon tsunamis, whirlpools, and earthquakes, devastating entire coasts with a single strike of his trident. One of the most famous myths involving Poseidon was his rivalry with Athena over the city of Athens. Both gods wanted to be its patron. The citizens decided that whichever god offered the most useful gift would win. Poseidon struck the ground, creating a saltwater spring, useful for trade but not drinkable. Athena offered the olive tree, symbolizing food, wood, oil, and peace. The people chose Athena, and the city was named in her honor. Poseidon, enraged by the rejection, cursed the city with droughts and disasters for years to come, showing his infamous temper. Yet he was also a creator. He is said to have created the first horse, striking a rock with his trident. For this reason, he is also the god of horses and chariot races. His love life was as chaotic as the tides. Poseidon fathered many children, gods, monsters, and heroes alike. Among them, Theseus, the legendary hero of Athens, Polyphemus, the Cyclops encountered by Odysseus, and Pegasus, the winged horse born from the blood of Medusa. One of his strangest stories involves King Minos of Crete. Minos prayed to Poseidon for a sign that he was chosen to rule. The god sent a majestic white bull, but Minos refused to sacrifice it as promised. In revenge, Poseidon cursed Minos' wife, Pasiphae, to fall in love with the bull, and from their unnatural union, the monstrous Minotaur was born. Respected, feared, and adored across Greece, Poseidon may not have ruled Olympus, but he ruled everything below and beyond the waves, and no one dared defy the god who could drown entire continents with a thought. Hades, the silent king of the underworld, Hades, the eldest of the three brothers, alongside Zeus and Poseidon, received after the Titanomachy, the realm of the underworld, the land of the dead. Despite ruling over a dark and fearsome domain in the eyes of mortals, Hades was not evil. He was no Greek devil. In fact, he was a fair and incorruptible ruler, responsible for maintaining the balance between life and death. His throne was not on Mount Olympus, but deep beneath the earth, in a palace of ebony, shrouded in mist and rivers, behind great gates. There, he reigned with solemnity, keeping watch over the dead, deciding their fates, and never allowing any soul to escape. The entry to the underworld was guarded by Cerberus, the three-headed hound with fiery eyes and a serpent's tail. No one could enter or leave without passing him. And then there was the river Styx, separating the living from the dead. Spirits had to pay a coin to Charon, the boatman, to cross to the other side, which is why Greeks buried their dead with coins on their eyes or in their mouths. Once inside, the souls were judged by three judges, Rhadamanthus, Aeacus, and Minos. They determined whether a soul would go to the Elysian Fields, a paradise for heroes and the righteous, the Asphodel Meadows for ordinary souls, or the dreaded Tartarus, where traitors and sinners suffered eternal torment. But perhaps the most famous story involving Hades was his abduction of Persephone, daughter of Demeter. Captivated by her beauty, Hades rose from the underworld in a chariot of black horses and abducted Persephone, taking her as his queen. Demeter, stricken with grief, searched the earth tirelessly. In her sorrow, she abandoned her duties, and nothing grew. The world plunged into a deadly famine. Fearing the end of humanity and the loss of offerings, Zeus intervened. He sent Hermes to negotiate Persephone's release. Hades agreed, but Persephone had eaten pomegranate seeds, the food of the dead, and those who eat in the underworld can never fully return. So a deal was struck. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother and part with Hades. Thus, the Greeks explained the cycle of the seasons. When Persephone is with Demeter, spring and summer, the world blooms. When she returns to the underworld, fall and winter, the earth grows cold and barren. Hades continued to reign in silence. Unlike other gods, he rarely interfered in mortal affairs. He was feared, but not worshipped openly. His very name was often avoided. Many simply called him Pluton, the wealthy one, ruler of all that lies beneath the ground. Demeter, goddess of the earth and life's cycle. Demeter, sister to Zeus and Hades, was the goddess of agriculture, harvest, and the fertility of the earth. Everything that sprouted from the soil was considered a result of her care. Crops, grains, fruits, and even flowers were seen as reflections of her mood and presence. Mortals worshipped her devoutly, as her favor meant food on the table and abundance in the fields. She was the great nurturing mother, but like any mother, she was also capable of profound grief. That grief was immortalized in the story of Persephone, her daughter. Persephone was Demeter's joy, radiant, young, and graceful. One day, while picking flowers, the earth suddenly split open. Hades emerged, seizing Persephone and dragging her into the underworld. Demeter, realizing her daughter was gone, began a desperate search. For 9 days and nights, she wandered without food, drink, or rest. When she finally discovered that Zeus had allowed the abduction, she was shattered. In mourning, Demeter refused to let anything grow. Crops withered and famine spread across the world. Even the gods began to worry, for without humanity, there would be no offerings, no temples, no prayers. Zeus sent Hermes to bring Persephone back. Hades agreed, but Persephone had already eaten 6 pomegranate seeds. This bound her forever to the underworld. A new pact was made. Persephone would spend 6 months with her mother and 6 months with Hades. From this came the seasons. When Persephone returns, spring and summer blossom with Demeter's joy. When she departs, autumn and winter descend with her sorrow. This myth made Demeter one of the most revered deities in ancient Greece. She was especially honored in the Eleusinian mysteries, secret rituals that promised a better afterlife to those who understood her divine sorrow and renewal. Demeter is more than the goddess of crops. She is the embodiment of the cycle of life and death, of grief and hope, of mourning and renewal, a deeply human force in divine form. Hestia, the silent flame of Olympus. Hestia is the goddess of the sacred hearth, the home, family, and domestic harmony. Eldest sister of Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, Demeter, and Hera, she was the first to be swallowed by Cronus, and the last to be freed. Yet despite this, Hestia remained calm, quiet, and serene, far removed from the drama and rivalries of Olympus. She symbolized the eternal household flame, the center of every Greek home and city. Every hearth, in private homes and public temples, kept a fire burning in her honor. That flame could never be extinguished, as it represented unity, divine presence, and community continuity. So vital was Hestia's role that every sacrifice, public or private, began and ended with offerings to her. It was common for Greeks to pour out the first and last drops of wine or food in her name. Despite her importance, Hestia chose a life of virginity and peace. She asked Zeus to free her from marriage and desire, and he agreed, making her one of the 3 eternal virgins of Olympus alongside Athena and Artemis. Both Apollo and Poseidon sought her hand. They offered gifts, promises, and praise. But Hestia gently refused them both, staying true to her nature, a protector of peace, not passion. Though she appears in very few myths, her presence was always felt. She did not seek power, glory, or vengeance. Her strength was in her constancy, her invisible yet essential warmth. In some traditions, Hestia eventually gave up her seat on Olympus to Dionysus in a final act of humility, choosing peace over power, unity over pride. She is the flame at the center of the home, the quiet force that holds all things together, and like a true hearth fire, Hestia warmed Olympus, without ever needing to burn. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and righteous war. Athena, also known as Pallas Athena, is the goddess of wisdom, strategy, justice, the arts, and craftsmanship. Unlike her counterpart Ares, who represents raw brutality and chaos in battle, Athena symbolizes reasoned, just warfare. The kind fought with strategy, intellect, and moral cause. She is the mind behind the sword, the planner who wins before a single blade is drawn. Her birth is among the most symbolic in Greek mythology. Fearing a prophecy that said his child with the goddess Metis would surpass him, Zeus swallowed Metis while she was pregnant. Sometime later, Zeus began to suffer from excruciating headaches. He begged Hephaestus to split open his skull, and from it, Athena emerged, fully grown, dressed in armor, with a war cry on her lips. She had no childhood. She was born ready. One of her most famous stories involves her contest with Poseidon over the patronage of a new city. Poseidon struck the ground and produced a saltwater spring. Athena planted the first olive tree, offering food, oil, and wood. The people chose her gift, and the city became known as Athens. Athena also played a role in the myth of Medusa. Originally, Medusa was a beautiful priestess in Athena's temple who took a vow of chastity. But when Poseidon violated her inside the sacred temple, Athena, enraged, not at Poseidon, but at Medusa for breaking her vows, transformed her into a monster, with snakes for hair and a gaze that turned mortals to stone. Later, Athena helped Perseus defeat Medusa, lending him her polished shield to use as a mirror, so he wouldn't have to look directly at the creature. Athena was also deeply involved in mythic wars. During the Trojan War, she supported the Greeks, offering strategy and guidance. She inspired Odysseus, one of her favorites, to conceive the Trojan horse, which led to victory. She was also goddess of weaving and crafts. In one myth, a mortal woman named Arachne boasted she was a better weaver than Athena. They held a contest, and Arachne's tapestry was flawless, but filled with scenes mocking the gods. Offended, Athena turned her into a spider, doomed to weave forever. Athena represents the balance between intellect and power. She was admired by mortals and gods, a guiding light of justice, logic, and righteous strength. A protector of cities, warriors, and thinkers alike, a divine embodiment of brilliance in battle and in peace. Apollo, god of light, music, and prophecy. Apollo, son of Zeus and the Titaness Leto, is the god of light, the sun, music, poetry, healing, disease, and prophecy. He is one of the most complete and admired gods in the Greek pantheon, the embodiment of youth, harmony, and divine brilliance. Even his birth was dramatic. Jealous of Leto, Hera cursed her so that no land would allow her to give birth. Eventually, the floating island of Delos gave her shelter, and there she gave birth to twins, Apollo and Artemis. Apollo's greatness showed early. One of his first acts was to slay the serpent Python, sent by Hera to torment his mother. By defeating the beast, he claimed the sacred oracle at Delphi as his own, and it became the spiritual center of ancient Greece. The oracle of Delphi, where the priestess Pythia spoke his messages, was visited by kings and heroes seeking divine guidance. Apollo's words were often cryptic, but always seen as sacred truth. But Apollo was more than a prophet. He was the god of music, art, and intellectual harmony. He carried a golden lyre, gifted by Hermes, and led the Muses, inspiring all artistic and scholarly creation. As god of healing, he could cure diseases, or send them with his golden arrows. In Homer's Iliad, he punishes the Greek army by spreading plague after a priest is insulted. Apollo's love life, however, was filled with heartbreak and tragedy. Among his most famous failed loves, Daphne, a nymph who fled from his advances and was transformed into a laurel tree. From then on, the laurel became his sacred symbol. Cronus, who betrayed him. In anger, Apollo killed her but saved their unborn child, Asclepius, the future god of medicine. Hyacinthus, a beautiful Spartan youth whom Apollo adored. In a tragic accident, or perhaps through jealousy from Zephyrus the west wind, Hyacinthus was struck and killed. From his blood the hyacinth flower was born. Apollo is the light that reveals, but also the heat that burns. He represents order, beauty, reason, and the sometimes painful truths of prophecy. Worshipped across the ancient world, Apollo stood at the crossroads between spiritual power and artistic expression. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, the moon, and female independence. Artemis, twin sister of Apollo, was also born on the island of Delos, daughter of Zeus and Leto. She came into the world with grace and immediately helped her mother deliver her brother, a divine midwife from birth. Despite this connection to childbirth, Artemis chose a very different path, one of eternal virginity, wild nature, and fierce independence. As a child, she asked Zeus to grant her freedom from marriage and domestic life, and he agreed. Artemis became one of the three virgin goddesses, alongside Athena and Hestia. She is the goddess of the hunt, wild animals, forests, the moon, and protection during childbirth. She roamed the mountains with her bow and arrows, surrounded by nymphs and sacred deer, shunning civilization and male company. She fiercely protected her privacy and purity. One of her most famous myths involves Actaeon, a young hunter who accidentally saw her bathing. Artemis, enraged, transformed him into a stag, and he was torn apart by his own hunting dogs, who no longer recognized their master. Another myth involves Orion, a giant and talented hunter. In some versions, Orion tried to violate Artemis, and she killed him with her arrows. In others, they were companions. But Apollo, jealous, tricked Artemis into shooting him from a distance. Grieving, she placed him in the stars as the Orion constellation. Artemis also played a key role at the start of the Trojan War. When King Agamemnon killed one of her sacred deer, Artemis stilled the winds, preventing the Greek fleet from sailing. To appease her, Agamemnon was forced to sacrifice his own daughter, Iphigenia, though in some versions, Artemis spares the girl at the last moment. Despite her vow of chastity, Artemis was a protector of mothers and newborns, overseeing safe deliveries. She ruled the moon, complementing her brother Apollo's dominion over the sun. Where he shone openly, she moved silently, a symbol of mystery, wilderness, and inner strength. Artemis represents the untamed feminine force, wild and sacred, protective yet merciless when crossed. She is a goddess of boundaries, between civilization and nature, light and shadow, freedom and law. Hermes, the messenger of the gods and master of tricks. Hermes, son of Zeus and Maia, one of the Pleiades, daughters of the Titan Atlas, was born in a cave on Mount Cyllene, and the moment he was born, he started causing mischief. Literally. As a newborn, he escaped his cradle, wandered across the world, and stole Apollo's sacred cattle. To avoid being tracked, he reversed the hoofprints, leading them backward. When Apollo discovered the theft, he was furious. But when he confronted Hermes, the clever baby played a lyre, an instrument he had invented using a tortoise shell and cow entrails. Apollo was so charmed that he forgave him and accepted the lyre as a gift. In return, he gave Hermes a golden staff, the caduceus, which would later become the symbol of medicine. Hermes is the god of messengers, travelers, merchants, thieves, diplomacy, eloquence, athletes, and dreams. He is also a psychopomp, meaning he guides souls to the underworld. No other god travels so freely between the sky, earth, and the realm of the dead. He is almost always depicted with winged sandals, allowing him to fly, a winged cap, symbolizing speed, and the caduceus, a staff with two serpents, representing balance and healing. But don't be fooled. Behind the charm and speed was a master trickster. Hermes was the god of loopholes, shortcuts, clever words, and playful deceptions. Whenever the gods needed a fast fix, a smart negotiator, or a messenger who could cross any boundary, Hermes was the one they called. He was also the one who rescued baby Dionysus. After his mortal mother perished before giving birth, Hermes delivered him to safety, far from Hera's wrath. He guided Perseus on his mission to slay Medusa, lending him winged sandals and valuable advice. Hermes wasn't a warrior or ruler, but he was present in nearly every great myth. He was the bridge between gods and mortals, between the living and the dead, between law and trickery. Hermes is the embodiment of adaptability, wit, and quick thinking. If Athena represents wisdom, Hermes represents cleverness, the kind that finds the perfect word or the fastest escape, a divine strategist of the streets. Hephaestus, god of the forge, fire, and resilience. Hephaestus is the god of fire, volcanoes, forging, craftsmanship, and invention. Unlike many Olympian gods, his origin was unusual. In some myths, he was born from Hera alone, without Zeus, as a way to match Zeus's solo birth of Athena. But at birth, Hephaestus was not beautiful or perfect like other gods. He was lame and deformed, and Hera, ashamed, threw him from Mount Olympus. He fell for a whole day and finally landed in the sea, where he was rescued by the sea nymphs Thetis and Eurynome, who raised him in a hidden grotto. There, far from Olympus, Hephaestus discovered his gift, the ability to craft anything from fire and metal. He created jewelry, weapons, palaces, and even automated servants. Once grown, Hephaestus sent Hera a golden throne as a peace offering, but it was a trap. When she sat on it, she was magically bound and unable to rise. None of the gods could free her, until Dionysus got Hephaestus drunk and brought him back to Olympus. In exchange for releasing Hera, the gods granted Hephaestus marriage to Aphrodite, the most beautiful of the goddesses. But their union was far from happy. Aphrodite constantly cheated on Hephaestus, most notably with Ares, the god of war. When Hephaestus discovered the affair, he forged an invisible net and caught them in the act, dragging them before the other gods as a public spectacle. Despite this humiliation, Hephaestus remained an essential god. He forged Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, Hades' helmet of invisibility, Achilles' armor, and even Pandora, the first woman, who carried a jar full of humanity's misfortunes. Hephaestus is the god of those who create in the shadows, who turn rejection into power, who forge strength through struggle. He showed the world that true power isn't in beauty or muscles, but in what your hands and mind can build from pain. Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and desire. Aphrodite is the goddess of love, beauty, lust, sensuality, and fertility. One of the most admired and feared deities of Olympus. Her origin is as poetic as it is shocking. She was born from sea foam, created when Cronus threw Uranus's severed genitals into the ocean. From this mix of divine blood and salt water, Aphrodite emerged, already grown, breathtaking, and utterly irresistible. Wherever she walked, flowers bloomed, and the air shimmered with her presence. Every god desired her, and to avoid conflict, Zeus married her to Hephaestus, the least threatening suitor. But Aphrodite was not one for restraint. Though married, she took many lovers, most famously Ares, the god of war. With him she had several children, including Eros, Cupid, god of desire, Harmonia, goddess of harmony, and in some versions, Phobos and Deimos, gods of fear and panic. When Hephaestus discovered the affair, he trapped them in a golden net and exposed them to the gods, causing laughter, but little consequence. But Aphrodite was more than a romantic symbol. She embodied the raw, chaotic power of desire, both creative and destructive. She was goddess of marriage, fertility, seduction, and charm. Her festivals, the Aphrodisia, celebrated love, nature, and passion. One of her most pivotal myths was the Judgment of Paris. When asked to choose the most beautiful goddess, Paris awarded the title to Aphrodite because she promised him the love of the most beautiful woman on earth, Helen of Sparta. This choice sparked the Trojan War, showing that love, like war, could change the fate of empires. She also loved mortals. With Anchises, she bore Aeneas, future founder of Rome. And with Adonis, a tragically beautiful youth, she shared a passionate, but doomed, love. When Adonis was killed by a wild boar, a flower, the anemone, sprang from his blood. Aphrodite is more than a pretty face. She is beauty, power, jealousy, passion, and divine magnetism all in one. A force that draws hearts, ignites wars, and reminds us that what we desire can both lift us and destroy us. Ares, god of war, fury, and bloodlust. Ares, son of Zeus and Hera, is the god of war, violence, bloodshed, and raw destruction. While Athena represents the strategy, discipline, and wisdom of war, Ares embodies its chaos, rage, and brutality. Among the Olympians, Ares was not well loved, even by his parents. The Greeks themselves were wary of him. He was worshipped more out of fear than admiration. On the battlefield, Ares brought not just death, but terror itself. He was often accompanied by dark personifications of war: Phobos, fear; Deimos, panic; Eris, discord; and Enyo, destruction. His arrival meant blood, screams, and fire. He didn't care for justice or cause. He fought for the thrill, the roar, the clash of blades. Despite being a god of war, Ares rarely emerged victorious in myths. He was wounded, mocked, and outwitted often, especially by Athena or mortal heroes. In the Trojan War, he sided with the Trojans, but was wounded by Diomedes, aided by Athena. When he complained to Zeus, his father laughed at him, calling him a disgrace. His most famous affair was with Aphrodite. Though she was married to Hephaestus, the two lovers met in secret, until Hephaestus trapped them and exposed them to the gods in shame. Still, Ares and Aphrodite had many children together, including Eros, the god of passionate love, Harmonia, the embodiment of balance between war and beauty, and in some versions, Phobos and Deimos, who became his companions in battle. Ares also fathered children with mortal women, including many Amazonian warriors, fierce daughters who reflected his untamed nature. Though despised, Ares was still respected. He was the reminder that war cannot always be planned. Sometimes it erupts, unpredictable and devastating. Ares is the embodiment of the dark side of battle. The fire in the eyes, the blood on the sword, the scream of instinct over reason. Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and divine madness. Dionysus, known as Bacchus in Roman mythology, is the god of wine, fertility, theater, pleasure, and transcendence. Among all the Olympians, his cult was perhaps the most wild, joyful, and dangerous. Born of Zeus and the mortal Semele, his origin was unique. Hera, jealous and vengeful, tricked Semele into asking Zeus to reveal his divine form. When Zeus did, the sight incinerated her, as no mortal could withstand his glory. Semele died pregnant, and to save the unborn child, Zeus sewed Dionysus into his own thigh. Afterward, the god was twice born, once from his mother, once from his father. To protect him from Hera's wrath, Hermes hid him, and Dionysus was raised in secrecy, often disguised as a girl. He grew up wandering the world, rejected by humans and gods. But wherever he went, grapes grew, wine flowed, and hearts opened. His followers included satyrs, half-goat wildlings, maenads, women in ecstatic trance, and wild beasts that obeyed his will. His rituals, known as Dionysian festivals, were not mere parties. They were spiritual explosions, breaking the chains of logic, hierarchy, and self. They embraced madness as a doorway to truth. But Dionysus was no fool. He could be terrifying to those who mocked him. Take King Pentheus of Thebes, who tried to ban Dionysian rites. Dionysus, disguised, lured him to spy on the rituals. Caught in a divine frenzy, the maenads, including his own mother, tore him apart, believing he was a wild beast. Despite being half mortal, Dionysus earned a seat on Olympus. In some traditions, Hestia gave up her throne to make room for him, a symbolic exchange of stability for ecstasy. He was also the god of theater. The first Greek tragedies and comedies were performed in his honor, as part of the city Dionysia festival in Athens. Dionysus is the god of joy and chaos, of release and transformation. Where others rule with law and structure, he rules by shattering norms, by guiding people beyond identity, fear, and control. He shows us that to truly understand life, sometimes we must lose ourselves first. Epilogue, the gods that shaped the world. And so ends our journey through the Greek pantheon, a realm of gods and goddesses with flaws, passions, and powers as vast as the cosmos. These deities weren't perfect. They loved, betrayed, created, and destroyed, just like us. But in their stories, we see reflections of human nature magnified, turned into myths that shaped philosophy, art, and identity for generations. Whether it's Zeus's thunder, Athena's wisdom, Hades' silence, or Dionysus' madness, each god holds a part of what it means to be divine and human. If you enjoyed this mythological journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to come. Forgotten gods, legendary monsters, tragic heroes, and timeless lessons. Leave a like, turn on the bell, and share this video with someone who loves mythology, history, or the mystery of the human soul. And tell me in the comments, which god or goddess do you connect with the most? Let's talk about it. See you in the next video, and may the gods be with you.